Hey guys, so this is my Poisonous Concoction Pathfinder. And honestly, to begin with, when I started building this character, I wanted to make it work because I heard Poisonous Concoction was just a skill that wasn't very good in the game. And I was like, you know what? Let's see if we can make it work, right? And to be honest, at the time, before the most recent buff, it was not great. And the only reason why it was actually doing okay was because Vine Arrow was absolutely busted. And we were basically using Vine Arrow to supplement our damage for AoE and for single target, really. Like, honestly, it was really a Vine Arrow build, but I just used Poisonous Concoction to increase the speed of clear. But now, it is actually a Poisonous Concoction build because Vine Arrow doesn't really do damage anymore, at least by itself. So right now my character is level 79, so not like super high level, but I was able to clear tier 10s very comfortably, and I cleared a tier 12 was the highest map that I cleared. It was a yellow map too, it was a rare. And the tier 10 that I did was a boss. So the tier 12 was not a boss map, and tier 10 was a boss map, and it was completely fine. Now, as we get higher level, as we scale, I'm going to be increasing my survivability because, as you can see, I only have 2k HP. And my gear is not quite there yet either. But I just wanted to make this guide for all of you guys who are fans of Poisonous Concoction to let you know that, yes, it does work. And I have done quite a bit of testing on the skill itself. So I'm pretty confident that the build that I have right now is a pretty dang good build. Now, there are probably other ways to scale it to be even better. Like, I was thinking maybe if like doing a crit build might be pretty decent, but scaling crit with unarmed abilities seems like it might be a little bit of tall order unless you're willing to invest a lot of currency. And even then, I don't know if it's that possible. I know in PoE 1 there were like facebreaker builds that could scale crit, but I don't know in PoE 2 whether or not that's possible with the amount of crit and things that we have on the tree, and also on our kind of characters for our equipment and abilities. But here we go. This is what I'm currently using for my skill setup, and we'll go into more details later. But I'm currently using Poisonous Concoction, and by the way, this is all mobilytics. We have Poisonous Concoction with Scatter Shot because it does shotgun. You will be able to get 3 stacks on a boss immediately if you use this and shotgun the boss or any mobs. Deadly Poisons, Chaos Infusion, and also Chaos Mastery. Now, this, from what I can tell, for a 4-socket link or a 5-link, I guess, is probably going to be the best setup. And then you can add, like, comorbidity if you do have a 6th socket right here, or 6th link. But honestly, in my experience right now, even without this +1 poison stacks, the bosses are just dying really quickly. So if you do need a little bit more oomph against bosses, you can feel free to add this at some point in time. But right now, I just don't see a need to. And then this could be help for clear, which, again, I don't think is really needed. In terms of the maximum amount of damage that you're doing for your, just throwing one attack, right? Because you don't want to be, like, having to spam multiple concoctions against regular mobs. This is going to be the best setup for just a single throw of attack as you're going through clearing, right? I also have Vine Arrow. As I mentioned, this used to be part of our main DPS, but unfortunately now Vine Arrow is completely gutted and nerfed, and we use it as a way to supplement our damage. Now, Vine Arrow still does do a significant amount of damage when combined with Poisonous Concoction, and I'll show you guys the DPS a little bit later. But currently, we just have Vine Arrow to increase our clear because Poisonous Concoction does suffer from clear. It is not very good. Even with the Pathfinder node right here with Contagious Contamination, that 1.5 meters is absolutely abysmal. It's very small, and it only really spreads the most damaging poison, right? So it doesn't really spread the multiple like stacks of poison. It only spreads the most damaging poison. So a 1 stack of our poison isn't that strong. So at the end of the day, clear is going to be an issue. So Vine Arrow is there to help for that with like a smaller group of mobs. But if you have like a huge like rushing in group of mobs, let's say you're doing a ritual, or maybe you're doing like a breach. I haven't done breach since the nerfs to it, but old breach, I would first pop a contagion, right? Pop a contagion, and then I would throw a concoction to help with AoE clear. So this is for AoE clear, and as I mentioned, Contagion is really there to help for AoE clear as well. We're going to be using Magnified Effect, Swift Affliction, and Arcane Tempo because our attack speed is really bad. Actually, before we go into that, Vine Arrow, something that you can do for Vine Arrow is pop in Life Tap if you find that the mana cost is too high, because, you know, we do use our Mana Flask as our source of DPS, so we don't want to be drinking too much Mana Flasks using skills that, you know, cost mana, basically. It is kind of expensive in terms of life cost, so there is that. But if you are struggling with mana problems because you are using Vine Arrow a lot and it's making you use your mana pots, try using Life Tap and see if that works out for you. There's not really any support gems that I'd put for Vine Arrow, because all of the support gems that are good for Vine Arrow, frankly, are good for Poisonous Concoction, and also Swift Affliction we have on Contagion right now, because Contagion honestly is very lackluster without it. But we'll go into that in a little bit. So right now, Vine Arrow, again, really Martial Tempo is all you need, and that pretty much takes care of everything that you want. And again, you can put Life Tap if you want. And Corrosion does not work because Vine Arrow, while it says it, you know, helps with poison damage, right? It does chaos damage equal to the poison damage per second. So even though it helps propagate poisons itself and it looks like it's poisoned when you do that, it doesn't actually do poison damage, so Corrosion does not help. So you can't use that to combo with like Poisonous Concoction and, like, you know, use it to break armor and things like that. That just doesn't work. And then Contagion, we currently are using, again, Magnified Effect, Swift Afflictions, and Arcane Tempo. We use Swift Affliction because, honestly, it just doesn't kill fast enough without it, because we're not scaling spell damage. So Contagion just doesn't really do enough damage to kill on its own or quickly enough if we don't have Swift Affliction. But, again, we use Contagion really pretty sparingly. I rarely ever use it. I only use it when, like, we have a huge group of mobs rushing at you and you really just can't handle that AoE and that amount of monsters coming at you, basically. Then we have Rain of Arrows. This is our Wither stacker. So basically, you know, Wither helps a lot with the amount of damage that we do. So we do Withering Touch, and then we do Inspiration. The reason why I'm not using Chaos Infusion is because we have on our tree Pure Chaos. Makes it so that we gain 11% extra damage as Chaos damage. So everything does Chaos damage. If you don't have that, you will want to use Chaos Infusion on it to make it do more Chaos damage. But the problem with that is it takes away from our damage from Chaos Poisonous Concoction. So, you know, ideally you will want to have that there, or if you don't, you know, if you don't want to nerf your damage for Poisonous Concoction, you could feel free to use something like a Totem that'll, I think it's like a Wither Totem, whatever it's called, that will do Chaos damage on its own, and then it can stack Withering Touch for you. But we have Withering Touch and Inspiration because this costs a lot of mana. As you can see, 270 mana, right? It doesn't show the cost after we put it before and after, but it reduces the cost significantly. This will be our main Wither stacker. And then also normally I have Concentrated Effect on here, but I just wanted to have this away because I want to talk a little bit about it later for Poisonous Concoction. Wind Dancer is our first kind of spirit gem. This is very, very good. Increases our evasion because we are an evasion-based character. And then I put Blind and Maim on there just as extra CC and disable. Ghost Dance is really good for combining with Wind Dancer because this will make it so that if you have any energy shield, it'll basically always give you some sort of energy shield buffer, because whenever you get hit, and it will restore energy shield equal to our evasion, and then, you know, that whole thing. I'm pretty sure you guys know this whole synergy is very, very good. And I have Clarity on here just because I had a little bit of extra spirit and I wanted to put something there. And again, if we are using Vine Arrow a lot, as you can see, it does eat at our mana. So ideally you're not spamming it that much, but if you do, the Clarity does help there. Personally, I have not had too much success with finding a third spirit gem. So for the most part, you don't really need Herald of Plague, but you'll be sitting at an extra 30 spirit. And because of that, I just use Herald of Plague because, as I mentioned earlier, the proliferation from our node right here is really, really small and abysmal. Herald of Plague at least makes it a little bit bigger. It's kind of like not super useful still, but it's something that I'm like, okay, well, it's 30 spirit, right? And it's something useful. Now, something else you can use if you really, really, really wanted to, right, is going to be the Alchemist Boon. That is something you can use, but personally, I really, ever since the changes to Poisonous Concoction's cost for flasks, I have not had any trouble keeping up my flask charges. Like pretty much zero. I've never run into a situation where I have run out of flask charges, and I've even run maps that give you this, right, reduced flask charges on them, and I have been completely fine. So I really don't think you need to run Alchemist Boon, but if it makes you more comfortable, especially if you're against a boss that is maybe a little bit too strong for you, then that's something you can try doing, right? You can also run things like Plague Bearer. Personally, I just think Plague Bearer does a little bit... it's not that useful because it requires you to be super close to the monsters, and also I think the animation is really slow, and from what I can tell, there's nothing you can really do to boost that animation speed, so I don't really like that. Withering Presence is something you can do if you want, but it does... it's like not that much wither, right? It's something you could do, and it requires you to kind of stand pretty close, so I don't really use that either. Again, one of the main problems of this build is going to be AoE and the ability to do clear, which is why we even have Contagion and Vine Arrow in here to begin with. Well, mostly Contagion. So having Herald of Plague there for me is just a little bit more comfort, and I don't really need the damage from Withering Presence to do that. And then we have Despair, which is what we use on bosses. So if we have any big targets that we need to hit down really quickly, pop a Despair, pop our Wither, and then throw our Vine Arrow, Poisonous Concoction. Pretty much takes care of anything, right? And you just keep spamming your Poisonous Concoction until the boss dies. So that's kind of the gem setup right now that I have. And then before we move on to other things, I did want to kind of give you an explanation for some of the gem choices that I did for Poisonous Concoction, just to show that certain things don't work / do work. And we'll do that at kind of one of the bosses in Act 3. So with that out of the way, let's talk about Poisonous Concoction and kind of how it works. So Poisonous Concoction, as I mentioned, it is something that adds poison onto the boss or a monster, right? So we can go up here, we throw a Poisonous Concoction, and it will add 1 stack of poison. If we add 2, it'll go down to 2, right? So that's kind of how Poisonous Concoction works. You're gonna kind of like any other poison skill, right? You throw out your attack, it adds stacks, which is also why if you use Scatter Shot, it will add 3 stacks onto the monster instantly because it shotguns and because that will increase the amount of stacks that you have. Now, the other thing that I want to note is that in terms of increasing your damage, unfortunately, Concentrated Effect for some reason does not actually increase your damage for Poisonous Concoction. I don't know if that's a glitch or anything like that, but we can go and test it out, right? So we can go to the boss, we'll throw our Poisonous Concoction attack at it. It did about 110k. Let's do that a couple more times, maybe one more time, just to, you know, show you maybe like the little bit of variance that happens. That way we can be a little bit more sure that we're not getting some sort of weird variance, right? That's 122k damage off of that one. Now let's put on the Concentrated Effect skill gem, which again, it's weird. It says deal more area damage but less skill effect. And if you look at Poison Concoction, it is an AoE attack. So you would think that it does area damage and it would scale it, but unfortunately it doesn't. Look at that, 106, right? It's within kind of that window of damage. Like if it was actually scaling it by a ton, it would be way more because 40% more damage, right? So for some reason, Concentrated Effect and Magnified Effect, right? They just don't affect Poisonous Concoction at all. They don't even affect the area. That's probably a glitch is my assumption, but we'll see. So that's kind of why we end up choosing the gems that we have here. And one thing to note is that Poisonous Concoction scales heavily with levels. So the higher level you can get your Poisonous Concoction, the better. So that's why you want to stack things like projectile skill levels, chaos skill levels, things like that, right? Because Poisonous Concoction scales heavily with level. And also I can show you as well that Vine Arrow is actually very, very good for increasing the damage of Poisonous Concoction. Because you can see here, I'm gonna throw Poisonous Concoction again, right? This was about like 100, 110 damage. And then if we go back and then we throw out Vine Arrow solo, since the nerfs, it does like no damage by itself. Like, look at that. It's pretty much abysmal damage. It's not doing anything, right? So 5k damage. But if you do throw out Vine Arrow at the boss, and then put out your Poisonous Concoction, then it will do quite a bit of damage. This boss is moving too much. Give me a second. Let's go back. For some reason, he didn't aggro to me. Thought he was going to, but yeah. So let's go here. Throw the Vine Arrow, Poisonous Concoction. As you can see, that did a significant amount of damage. A lot more damage, right? About 60k more damage. So that's why we end up using Vine Arrow in this setup, because it does make our damage quite a bit more. And one thing to note, actually, that I didn't note earlier, is that with Vine Arrow, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be changed, if you don't put quality on it, it only proliferates poison based on 50% of the, 50% of the poison is turned into chaos damage, right? Of the initial poison attack that you did. But if you add even one level of quality in it, it goes all the way up to 100. So if you're using Vine Arrow in any situation where you're proliferating poisons, use it with at least one quality. Pop a GCP on it because it will do double the amount of damage that it did before. Just a quick tip, right? So there's that, and that is kind of how you scale your damage with Poisonous Concoction. This is not, at the end of the day, at the end of the day, it doesn't work exactly like poison, in the sense like other poisons you can't scale with chaos damage. But because this does do chaos damage as a base, you can scale it with chaos damage. And oddly enough, these things don't work. Concentrate effect, magnified effect, it does not work. It's very weird. So yeah, that's how you scale Poisonous Concoction damage. Now with that knowledge as well, we can talk about our equipment, because our equipment is pretty much tailored completely to increasing levels of our Poisonous Concoction, which is why before this was basically a Vine Arrow build, because the equipment that you use for this build is basically the same as Vine Arrow. So I'm using Widow Hail right here, and I have a bow of attacks fire an additional arrow on this. I was able to evolve this myself, got lucky. This is not best in slot. You still want the 300% increase to bonuses gained from Quiver. That is still best in slot. But this is really good for clear, right? Because as I mentioned, this build does suffer from clear speed, because Poisonous Concoction does not have a huge AoE, and our ability to proliferate our poisons just sucks in this build. So having the +1 arrow is really nice just for AoE, and when you're clearing, you can go Vine Arrow, Poisonous Concoction, right? That's kind of like typically how you do it. So we use Widow Hail, and then for our Quiver, you want to have at least a +2 to level of all projectile skills, because we want to scale our projectile damage. And then after that, you're going to want to get attack speed, and you're also going to want to get the primed Quiver, because that also comes with a base attack speed. So the two important things for your Quiver are attack speed and projectile skills. So get that. And then for your necklace, my amulet is really, really bad. But it gives me int, which is, again, you need a lot of int in this build. It also gives you +3 to all projectile skills, which again is what we're scaling. So that is very nice in terms of helping us increase our damage. Now, the rest of the stuff is just going to be evasion. We're just going to put evasion on everything. Gloves are going to want to have attack speed on it, because this is an unarmed attack. So unarmed attacks are pretty dang slow because you don't have the base attack speed from your weapon. So you're going to want to get attack speed in as many places as possible for that reason. Now, for our rings, Survivability, right? Survivability. But then I also was able to snag these increased chaos damage on these, which were very nice. Again, my gear is nowhere near complete, but it is something I'm working on again. But at the baseline, Widow Hail, you're going to want the attack speed and proj speed or proj skills, and you want the proj skills on your amulet. Now, Widow Hail, I believe it's like 225% is kind of a threshold, and like 287% is another threshold for the levels of your gems. So just at the end of the day, try to get it higher. But I think like higher than like 225 or 227 is like not really impactful in terms of like the projectile skills until like 287. But again, just try to get it as high percentage as possible. And if you can get a bow of fire's additional arrow, or if you can get 300%, of course, those are going to be the best ones that you can get. And everything else is just survivability. You want moose in your boots, pretty typical stuff. Again, the really requirements are the bow, the quiver, and the amulet. And then again, if you can get some chaos damage on these, that would be wonderful as well. Now, another thing to note is we do want mana flasks to be good. You don't really care too much about quality because quality doesn't change the amount of charges it has. So anything that has to do with charges is really good. For example, I have 60% increased charges, right? That is close to the maximum for this. And then the other ones that you're going to want are potentially recovers over time, charges over time. That's something that you could do, or increased amount of charges that you get from killing mobs, or just increase in general. Those two lines, the increased charges and basically any ability to get more charges, is going to be best in slot for your mana flask. So you're going to want to get those two. Now for playstyle. So in general, clearing mobs, as I mentioned before, your clear is pretty abysmal. As you see, I'm going to throw this right here, right? And look, it missed this big dude who was like pretty much right there. So the clear for this build is pretty dang bad. Like, I'm not even getting any of these ones on the side, right? It really is like such a small AoE for your clear, and I already have Peril of Plague on too. If I didn't, it would be even worse. Let's see. So yeah, like I said, I throw that, none of these get, right? So for our kind of clear, you can just go around throwing your flasks, that's fine. But if you do want to have more clear, you can throw out your vine arrow as you're going because it's pretty fast, and then you throw out your flask on top of that vine arrow to proliferate everything. And then now all the mobs walking over the vine arrow will be receiving that damage from the vine arrow plus the poisonous concoction. That's basically, for the most part, what you're going to be doing. If it's not a huge pack, just throw your poison concoction. If it is a kind of bigger pack, you're going to want to throw your vine arrow down and then poison concoction. Pretty much usually I just do vine arrow, poison concoction because it's just pretty fast. Now, if there is, again, a huge and fast moving pack, kind of like a breach, what you're going to want to do is when you approach that pack, you're going to want to throw out a contagion and then throw out the poisonous concoction. It will make the clear infinitely better and faster. So you will want to do that for any huge groups of enemies because that will proliferate your poison in a much larger area compared to before, and it'll keep proliferating and proliferating and proliferating, and then it will likely kill the entire pack and the entire wave. You kind of only have to do one. Now, that's for AoE playstyle, right? When you're just walking around the map. For bosses, typically what I do is I will throw away my weighted arrows, put out my despair, and then vine arrow, and then poisonous concoction. And that's kind of how you do the maximum amount of damage on any type of boss. This one, of course, it killed it in one shot. But if it's a stronger boss, you're going to want to just, throw the vine arrow and then keep throwing the poisonous concoctions at it to keep stacking these poisons. For me, I have my stacks maximum at currently 6 because I don't have like a +1 on my gem because I don't use comorbidity. But again, if you have problems with single target, feel free to pop on comorbidity onto your poisonous concoction and replace one of these. I think the best one to replace, my opinion, is going to be probably like Chaos Infusion. So you can replace that, and then you can hopefully have a little bit better single target because you'll get an extra 2 stacks onto the boss from that. Because for our tree, we are going to be having this one right here that doubles the amount of poison stacks that you have. So +1 equals a +2 at the end of the day. So with that, let us go into the skill tree. Now, for our tree, this is what it currently looks like, right? And this is not the final tree. As you can tell, I'm only 79. Now, if we look at the finalized tree, this is what it's going to eventually look like. So we are, again, grabbing all the poison nodes, right? Right here, right here, right here, right here. Also want to grab the quiver nodes. But other than that, we are going to be grabbing all the chaos nodes as well. And then all of the unarmed nodes, well, the unarmed damage. Personally, I just don't think the attack speed is really necessary. But if you find that you want a little bit of attack speed, you can grab these. But in terms of the order that we went, right? We went all the way down here, the path, right? Because our Poisonous Concoction is a projectile, so projectile damage will scale it. We went up here to grab these nodes, and then we went up here, and then we grabbed these poison nodes right here. Now, one thing to note is that, and this was pretty much every build for Path of Exile these days, and Path of Exile 2, they are super stat hungry. So whenever you do find these stat clusters like this, it's pretty good value to take them. So again, we went up here to grab the poison nodes, went up here. Now, one thing to note, right? And this is not a leveling tree. This is the finalized tree. For our build, you will be leveling with gas arrow or poisonous arrow, whatever that's called, right? I use gas arrow because poisonous concoction, at least when I was using it, was not something that was good for leveling. Now, the new buffed version, I don't know. I haven't really tested it out, but back then it was bad for leveling. So if you find that, and of course with respecs, you can always respec, right? You can always try to spec into Poisonous Concoction and see if it works for you. And if it does, then you could go straight for these chaos nodes. But when I was doing it, it was pretty much only a late game, end game build. So I never took these nodes right here because gas arrow and other poisons don't scale with chaos, at least the damage over time portion. So that's why you don't take nodes like these. So I basically took the poison nodes and I actually went to the projectile damage nodes over here just as a stopgap. And I even took some of these like attack damage nodes as well, because all of that scaled the amount of poison damage that we did. But yeah, we basically went up this way, we went down this way, and then we grabbed the poison nodes. And that was kind of our leveling build. So we pretty much just took down this path right here, grabbed these poisons, went down here, grabbed the quiver, grabbed the poisons, and then up this way, grabbed these poisons. And of course, again, the attack damage right here. We took the projectile damage right there. We even took some of these physical nodes as well. And then we went this way and went for the poisons over here. So if that has changed since the Poisonous Concoction got buffed, and you can actually use it as a mid-game leveling skill, you can feel free to grab these chaos nodes on the way as well. Now, lastly, we are going to be grabbing down here for damage these ailment nodes, because poison is an ailment, a damaging ailment, so this will buff it as well. And then we are going to be going for acrobatics as well, so we're going to be grabbing evasion rating nodes whenever we find the need to. Again, in Path of Exile, what I've found is basically for the majority of the story, you really don't need a build-in survivability. You could kind of just blast through it and it'll be fine. Like, just dodge roll, make sure you don't get hit by things, increase your life as you go, and then you should be fine. The evasion nodes are really there for late game when the maps do get a bit more difficult and you need the evasion to survive. Now, when it comes to the Ascendancy, my first node was this node right here. The poison effect, and then contagious contamination. Looking back at it, maybe that wasn't the best, because for a first node, it probably might have been better to get the passive points, but that would require you to do some sort of respecking, which isn't like hugely expensive, but if you don't want to respec, you can go and grab these ones first. And again, at the time, Poisonous Concoction was not a good leveling skill. So if you want to experiment, you can try grabbing Poisonous Concoction first, and seeing if that works for you, given the recent buffs, and And if it does, then you could start doing Poisonous Concoction ready and just go into this as your first one, then go into this for your second one, and then go into this for your third one. But if you want to be consistent, and this is what I did, I went down here to Contagious Contamination first, then I went up here to Overwhelming Toxicity second, and then I went Poisonous Concoction third. Again, if you think it's fine, you should experiment, and then you could try going Poisonous Concoction first, then going these other ones. But, you know, depending on how strong it is now, your mileage may vary. So you might need a respec if you do that. Hopefully, you know, you guys found this guide helpful, and hopefully this helps propel you forward in your Poisonous Concoction journey. Again, I don't think that this is a perfect guide by any means, and also, actually, one thing I forgot to mention is that this build is very stat hungry because it runs both int and dex abilities. So you will be getting quite a few int nodes along the way to satisfy your int needs. But yeah, hopefully this helps you with your Poisonous Concoction build. I would say that it has gotten a lot better since the buff, and this is definitely, you know, probably not the most efficient tree out there. It's probably decent, it'll do the job, but I'm sure people can optimize this as well. And also, I think if we can make crit work, that is probably an even higher ceiling build than this one. But this is going to be a build that works well for most people. So yeah, hopefully this build helped you guys. And, you know, if you like the video, please hit the sub button. It's the best way to support the channel, and I will continue to put more updates out for this build as I get further into the game, as well as putting up some other builds as well when I, you know, finish with this build eventually and move on to something else. And also, I stream every single night on twitch.tv/MeSelectShrew, starting at 10 p.m. PST, so I'd love to see you guys there. But if not, hopefully I see y'all on the next video. All right, guys. Peace. Oh, this is the map where Bacon stole my items. I'll never forget. Every time I do this map, I'll remember. They were borrowed. Uh-huh. Sure. I will never, every time I do this map, I will now remember. I will never forget. Okay. These enemies gotta stop running in from the corner. Okay, let me have my time with these enemies, alright? Oh, Jesus Christ, I just got slowed to, like, fucking crawl right there.
Quite nice.
These guys take up forever to spawn. I swear to God. Oh Lord! I don't want to get hit by those. Okay. Jesus Christ. Borrowed permanently. Alright. Alright. Whatever you say. Imagine Lowell was WASD? I mean, it would be very different, for sure. I mean, you can kind of imagine it, right? If you play with a controller, it's kind of like that. Like, not exactly. Not exactly, but it's kind of as though you were playing with a controller. I want to try playing Path of Exile on my Steam Deck, though. I want to try installing Path of Exile and playing it on my Steam Deck. I feel like it would work out pretty well. I would hate it. Why? Lost Ark on a controller? Or WASD? You'll still use Steam Decks? Yeah, they do. There's a very passionate community behind them, too. I did that and he liked it? What, playing on controller? Or playing Poe? on Steam Deck. Looking to get in a Steam Deck? What for? What games do you want to play on it? Barely broke a sweat. Disney Dreamlight Valley. That was fun. Oh no, Steam Deck is very popular. Yeah, it's very popular. I mean, yeah. They even released like an OLED version. Record things are far watching streams on laptop. Record things on doing Disney or Dreamlight Valley too. What the? Something just blew me up right there. Luckily, I didn't die. I don't know how I survived. Oh, Jesus Lord. I got blown up again right there. Holy shit, how did I not die again? That's insane. Okay, we have another enemy, a rare over here, and a boss. Let's head this way. These goddamn golems, these sentinels, man, they gotta go. Swear to God. Oh my God, I couldn't even move past him. I couldn't even move past him. This guy is not happy. Oh, those are probably the things that blew me up, honestly. Those little skitter bots. Oh, dead. An easy trophy. Okay. Okay. Okay, it's time for the boss, guys. Okay. Okay. Ooh.
Death from above.
Ooh. Don't get hit. Don't get hit. Don't get hit. Don't get hit. He's dead. He's dead. He's dead. Easy. We're gaming. We're gaming. And he gave me... Oh! Oh! What the fuck killed me? Oh my God. Either way, we fucking cleared the map.